expedition, and you learned a lot, and they helped you. Like the Galapagos can be a little difficult sometimes, but they were there to explain things and to help you get off and on the little boat and stuff like that. So it was very small, and yeah, and you were well taken care of.
Terrific, thank you. Laura, do you want to share something too?
Probably the whales. I think we saw a blue whale, which they said they hardly ever saw.
Very rare.
Getting into the small towns, getting into the teeny tiny little harbor, and getting around the whole place. The places where we got to are just, you can't get with a big cruise ship.
Yeah.
Very neat.
Yeah.
And I think Nora, Denise, and Linda had said you did expedition cruises before. Denise, who did you do yours with to Galapagos? Do you remember?
Yes, do you want me to talk about competitors?
We won't talk about other companies, but it wasn't Lindblad. That's what I want to make sure.
It was another company.
As
Okay.
long as you went there, that's the important thing.
That's the important thing. And Linda and Nora, you guys didn't go with Lindblad, correct? Okay.
No, and it wasn't to Galapagos.
Okay. Where did you do yours?
It was in the Eastern Arctic.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Yeah, we did the Galapagos as part of doing Peru and Ecuador, and then we hopped on this the cruise to the Galapagos, which is a competitor. I didn't consider it an expedition, but I guess it does fit that definition.
There you go. Well, let me turn it over. What I'll do now, folks, is I'll mute everyone and unmute Lesa. And then we'll get her to chat a little bit, and we can open it up for questions if need be. Hi, Lesa, how are you?
I'm good. And I do have some slides, but I'm always happy just to chat too, right? And if someone's got a question, if you want to put your hand up, a fluid conversation is always so much more fun, because if we can answer things as we go, that's the better way. And I like that Sheila kind of started us off with what is an expedition, because that expedition word can be a little bit scary for folks if it's something you haven't done in the past. Because it sometimes conjures up roughing it and, not having great food and, having to walk long distances and being marched up the face of an active volcano. That's not what we do. We started back in 1966. Actually, Lars-Erik Lindblad was the very first person to ever take guests to Antarctica. And that was the very first expedition small ship trip in the world. So our founder's renowned as the father of small ship expedition cruising. And he did that because he was very passionate about the planet and what he was seeing out in the world and the loss of natural habitat and wildlife. And he really wanted to share it with like-minded people so that they could come back and be as passionate about it as him and help us care for it. So even to this day, whenever we step off on our ships on any expedition, the basic focus is to impassion and to get people excited about these places so they'll come home and they'll tell others why we have to care for them. So that's why we do everything we do. That's the very founding of who Lindblad is. And his son, Sven Lindblad, then picked up the company 40 years ago and has grown us from that one little red ship that did Antarctica in 66. And then the second year, we did the very first trips of any company to Galapagos, and that was in 67. And what's really interesting in that, for those folks who've been to Galapagos, at that point, there wasn't a national park. And Lars-Erik Lindblad was very passionate about these islands and caring for them because he realized just how special they were. And even by that time, a lot of non-endemic species that shouldn't have been there were on the islands. And so he worked with the Ecuadorian government and actually paid out of his own wallet the wages of the first two park rangers to ensure that the Galapagos National Park was established. So for him, this was something that had to happen. It was an imperative to him that Galapagos was protected. And over those years, we've provided millions of dollars through our guests and their support as well, but millions of dollars for the removal of non-endemic species. There's great stories about the removal of the goats from Galapagos. I don't know if you know, but the Spanish would come through there and they would pick up their last water before they headed home. They very quickly realized that giant tortoises were fantastic fresh meat that didn't need water or food. And so they'd dump all their goats and donkeys and pigs on the islands, and they'd take these lovely big tortoises with them, and they'd disappear. Well, double whammy on the Galapagos tortoise, because the eggs would be crushed, all these new animals would eat all the food, and so the tortoise population was being decimated. And so we helped with a program called a Judas goat program, where they rounded up a few goats, painted big red X's on their bottoms, loved them, fed them heaps of yummy food, sent them back out to the wild. And of course, all those goats went, I don't like it in the wild. I'm going to take all these guys back with me to where all the good food was. And over time, they were able, through these Judas goats, to remove these non-endemic species from the island. So these are the kind of things that we want to get involved with to protect the places that we're going to. It's really important to us.
And Lesa, one of the things that I learned is without Lindblad, there would really not be a Galapagos National Park. Isn't that right?
That is correct. Yeah, that work from Lars in the very beginning, really pushing for the park to be established, was a really integral part in the islands being protected, and the reason why we can all go there today. And the reason why we can go there today and see it actually more pristine today than it was 30 years ago, because those non-endemic species, a lot of them have been removed. And we're starting to see the giant tortoise come back in a natural way, which is what we all want, right? So I am getting to the initial question I posed, which is how hard is an expedition? But I want to kind of lead you into it. And so from those very early days, Lars realized that not everybody is a cookie cutter of each other, right? So you don't get on a ship with 100 guests and 100 fellow travelers and you're not all the same. Some people are going to love to hike. Some people are going to be much more of the photography kinds. Others are interested in the history of the place or the wildlife of the place. Some just want to kayak or be on a Zodiac. And so from the very beginning, it was really important to us that we crafted itineraries that allowed for multiple levels of activity. Whether you want to go do that 5-mile hike at Lake Eva up in Alaska, or you just want to do the half a mile hike along the beach with a National Geographic photographer, there's always options. And for most of the places we go, if you can do a couple of football fields, you can do the majority of the places that we visit at some level. And what's cool about an expedition is often the thing that makes us most excited when we're on the ship is sitting around dinner when someone goes, I did something today that I never thought I would do. I pushed myself that little bit further. I did something I didn't think I was capable of. That's truly experiencing a place, right? Because you've done something that is going to stick with you the rest of your life. And that's what these travel experiences should be about. And so Sven Lindblad really has grown us from those first couple of destinations. We now travel, and it's going to be a test on this at the end. You ready? So we do everything from the Russian high Arctic, the top of the Russian Arctic from Tromsø to Nome, all the way over top of Russia. We do the Canadian Arctic. We do Newfoundland. We come down, good girl. We do Newfoundland. We come down. We do Alaska. We come down to the Columbia and Snake River, the Channel Islands, down to Baja California, Sierra Cortez, Patagonia, Antarctica, the Galapagos, South Georgia, Falklands, Machu Picchu, Peru, Amazon, the Mekong, the Dalmatian coast, the Greek Isles, Svalbard, Iceland, Greenland. So just such a wide range of amazing places that we go, but always planned to get you into the places that those big ships don't go. If there's a dock and they're selling tchotchkes, we're trying to stay as far away as humanly possible, right? There's other people that can take you to buy tchotchkes made somewhere else. We want you to go and have that authentic experience of stepping into a small village and being a small number of guests. So 100 people, our biggest ship is 148 guests. That's the biggest it gets with us. Our smallest is 28. And our brand new super sexy ship, the National Geographic Endurance, is only 126. And so we're talking about intimate numbers. But if you're going to a small Inuit village, which maybe has 300 or 400 people, if we're taking 100 people ashore, that's an immersion. That's the opportunity to understand, to be with the locals. But if you're going to a village with 300 or 400 people and there's 500 or 1,000 of you, that's kind of like a little bit more like an invasion, right?
Yeah.
It's not an intimate experience. So for us, it's always finding places where that intimacy of scale is really important. And that you are stepping foot on something that is so unique and remote. That's why you'll see a lot of wet landings on an expedition. Doesn't mean we throw you over the edge of the Zodiac, make you swim ashore.
Does everyone know what a wet landing is? Yes?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
No?
So a wet landing is really easy. So we have these lovely Zodiac boats, which are super comfy, right? We get you in the Zodiacs, we take you in, you sit on the front, you pop your legs over into the water on the edge of the beach and walk ashore. If it's a cold climate, we've got these great boots that we can supply. If it's in warmer climates, of course, you're going to do that in some sandals and then change into your walkers once you get ashore. But it's safe and it's an easy way to get to beaches that, you know, big ships that need a dock cannot do. So it gives you that intimacy of scale and access. And then a true expedition is all about inclusivity. It's about all of the things that go with an expedition. So, and I kind of equate it, Nelly, to like Africa, right? So if you go to Africa and you're staying at a wonderful safari camp, they don't come up to you and go, oh, you'd like to do a sundowner tonight. That's going to be an extra $90 and we can't get you to see the sunset until next Wednesday. That's not an expedition. Is everything is included. Your kayaking, your cross-country skiing, your snowshoeing, your kayak, your Zodiac safaris, all your snorkel gear. That comes with the territory of what an expedition is. And we want you to get as many opportunities to use that equipment in the places we go to. You know, in Antarctica, early in the season, cross-country skiing over the sea ice is just such a cool experience. And everyone should have the chance to do it. You know, that's.
And one of the things you talked about is how difficult an expedition cruise is. And I think that a lot of people are worried about that. Wet landings, dry landings, whether or not you have to crawl over the side of the Zodiac, they're not terribly difficult. But one of the things that I stress to I mean, unless you have mobility issues, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't do it. But one of the things is that your crew really assists people getting in and out of the Zodiac, as long as you can, what's it called?
Your Zodiac hold?
Yeah.
Yep. No, look, and we want to speak to you. And Sheila is such a brilliant advisor partner with us. We don't want you to be there if you're not going to be able to do all the things you want to do on board. So we're going to talk with you and say, look, Galapagos can be a little tricky because there's a couple of islands with black ribbon lava, which can be a little unsteady. So are you steady on your feet? Maybe on that day, you don't go and do the hike. You just do the Zodiac safari around the edge, right? Or you look at other options. But if we know in advance that might be a bit tricky for you, there's a doctor on board all of our trips, and their job is to help facilitate if you might need a little assistance. But certainly an expedition isn't something for someone who has real mobility issues, because it's just, there'd be nothing more heartbreaking than seeing penguins over there and you can't get off to go see them, right? Because that's why you're there. You want to, a true expedition wants you to stand in the penguin poo. That's where I want you to be with me, right in the penguin poo. Because that's why you're there.
And what's really neat, I'll say for Denise and Francis, who are both originally from Newfoundland, like me, you know, the really neat thing about doing an expedition cruise around Newfoundland with Lindblad is that they are really respectful of the history, as you would be to any destination you go to. But I know I was nervous when I did the expedition, you know, this American company coming to Newfoundland, are they going to look down, you know, are they not going to respect the history and the geography? But I was so impressed with the quality of the lectures. Like you guys know Newfoundland, and Laura was on the cruise with me. We had an expert, a Viking expert, give the history of the Vikings coming from Iceland and coming over to Newfoundland and landing in Lansom Meadows and telling us the history of it. And then that person actually came on the expedition cruise excursion with us the next day and was interpreting what we were seeing and giving us the history. We had another person tell us the history of fish. And again, as a Newfoundlander, you're like, oh boy, you know, what are they gonna, because not everybody respects a destination for its people and its nature, but they really took it seriously and understood the history of cod in Newfoundland and the importance of the moratorium and what it did to the people of Newfoundland, and just told the tale in a very respectful way. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
And that is very important. I mean, it is extremely important to us that wherever we take our guests, it is reflective of the people of that place, right? Our expeditionary teams, our ornithologists, our botanists. We travel in many destinations with an ethnomusicologist by the name of Jacob Edgar. And Jacob puts music or performances together from local musicians that reinforce the culture and the history of music in the regions we visit. And just to have that level of access, right, it adds a whole different feel to a destination if you understand where the local music comes from. Why do they use those instruments? What's the history of them? How does that tie in to the history of the place? And then on top of that, to have I kind of laugh about the whole farm to table movement now, because apart from the fact that if you're like me, my parents grew up and it was all farm to table, you know.
In case you haven't guessed, she's from Australia.
I'm from Australia. You know, it was all farm to table. But from the very start with Lindblad, it's always been sustainable cuisine, because we've always bought locally, because that money goes into the local community, supports them so they grow. And you're getting the flavors of that region, and the food is fresh and vibrant. It's certainly not like a cruise ship where you've got 20 different dining room selections, but that's not what it's about. It's about tasting and understanding the cuisine of the region, sitting with your expedition team. Yes, Kathleen, you have a question.
It's not a question, it's for Sheila. You've unmuted us all and the sound is not as good.
Oh, okay, I'll mute again.
Okay, thank you.
Hang on a sec, Lisa, I gotta unmute you. One sec. There you go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I gotcha. So for us, it's about bringing all of those parts together to make the whole, right? So amazing cuisine that is reflective of the region, specialists who know it and understand it and are passionate about it, right? It's very easy to dump someone on a ship and say, talk about so-and-so. It very quickly shows up if they're not passionate about the place they're talking about, right? And that they don't truly understand it. We have our National Geographic photography program, which means on the Orion, the Explorer, and the Endurance, you travel with a National Geographic photographer, one of the team that has been featured in the magazine. And on all of our other ships, it's a Lindblad certified National Geographic photographer. The only difference is they've not been published in the magazine, but they're brilliant photographers. And their job is really just to help you take photography. And it doesn't matter if it's on one of these things, a cell phone. We do whole classes just on how to get the best out of your cell phone, because the cameras in these little monsters are just as good as many of our, professional cameras of 5-10 years ago.
How many of you guys are photographers? Raise your hand. Yeah, we have any Nikon people? Pentax? What are the two brands? Nikon and
Canon is big.
Canon. Well, just to tell you, one day we were sailing on the Newfoundland expedition that Laura and I did. And when we were sailing one day, they actually broke people into 3 groups. So the 2 big groups, the Nikon and the Canon, I guess. And then other folks like me, I have my little cell phone. But they took you at the level you were at and what you were doing. And they actually taught you how to take better pictures. So with me, with my iPhone, there was a professional photographer showing me how to line up the grid, how to do the light, and how to ensure the focus was correct. And then if you were Kodak or Canon, you got Pentax, you got your special instruction as well. And you guys, do you always have gear on board that you can borrow?
Yeah, so on nearly all of our ships now, I think the only place we're still trying to get it approved is the Galapagos, but on all of our other vessels, we have a program with B&H Photography out of New York. And that means there's a photo locker with state-of-the-art camera bodies, zoom lenses, Swarovski crystal binoculars that you can check out each evening and use for the next day, bring it back, try something else new. So it just lets you, if you've always used a Nikon camera, you might take out one of the mirrorless new Sony cameras and give that a shot for the day. So it just allows you to kind of test drive equipment in the field before you go buy it and have a little bit of fun with it. So it's, it's a really fun way for,
Sorry, I just realized I didn't show your slides. Can you see them?
We can. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Oh, nope. Yep. That's okay. And we don't have to see them. But
Oh, you can't see them? Can anyone else raise your hand if you can see? Yeah?
yeah, okay.
Do you want to do it then, Lisa, and I'll share it?
Yeah,
Let me stop the share and I'll give you the share thing.
okay. We can do this. We have the technology. Oh, it says host has disabled participant screen sharing.
No, I think I've just turned it on for
Oh,
everyone.
good. There it is.
Okay, go
Got
ahead.
it. Okay. So you should be seeing a giant penguin.
Yes.
Awesome. So this is Lars Erik Lindblad, just if you wanted to know what our handsome founder looked like. So this is him back in the very early days. This is one of the stories I love about Lars Erik. So when we first started going to Antarctica, no one understood what travel to Antarctica meant, right? No one had been down there as a guest. And so people would actually go hiking on icebergs. That's kind of a big no-no. Icebergs have a lovely tendency of flipping over without any notice. So we'd been taking people on hikes of icebergs, and one day they all got back to the ship, and about half an hour later, this giant iceberg flipped over. And pretty much Lars Erik's response was, tick, something we don't do on expeditions anymore. But that was how wild expedition travel was in the early days. And I stress in the early days, we have very strong safety protocols and we've never lost a group. But he was just one of those people who wanted to get folks out to explore. And his son Sven, as I said, has been leading us for 40 years. There's actually a bay in Antarctica named after Lars Erik Lindblad. It's Lindblad Cove. And it's a place we always try to go when we're in Antarctica to go kayaking. It's just the most beautiful, tranquil area to get the kayaks out. The National Geographic relationship, that's one that a lot of people want to ask questions about. There's this misconception that they own Lindblad Expeditions. They don't. We actually started an alliance with the National Geographic Society about 15 years ago now. And that alliance was because there was this perfect fit between us going to these remarkable places and the National Geographic Society having scientists that need to get there or scientists that have work in those places. And so we often will facilitate getting folks down where they need to go or moving equipment for them and really focusing on the work of the National Geographic Society. So that relationship has just been a perfect fit. And our team on board has access to all that information as well. So it just really enriches your experience when you're traveling with us aboard the ships. I love this photo because it even makes the girlies look like they have beards, but they really don't. We have amazing expedition team members. I mean, that's Mike and Tom, and I believe that's Linda. It's kind of hard when they've got all their gear on, but some of these folks have been with us nearly since the very beginning, and they've been to Antarctica a couple of 100 times. I mean, it's remarkable that when you travel with someone like a Tom Ritchie, who has been to Antarctica close to, I think it's 250 times, the childlike wonder in his eyes when you go with him, every trip, it never changes because every trip is different. One of the things that we find, particularly even in Galapagos, people always say, when should I do Galapagos? What month? There is not a bad month to do Galapagos. Every month is a little different. You're going to see those key elements, giant tortoises, the blue-footed boobies, the frigate birds, but you'll see them in different numbers and you'll see a different feel to the island. Sometimes they're green, sometimes they're a little bit more arid, but you could go 12 times and see a very different Galapagos. Same with Antarctica, and I'll explain the 4 months of Antarctica in a minute because I think it's really important. But we are also the only company that has an underwater dive team on our ships, and these guys are diving and bringing back images to the ship to share with you in the evening. So you understand when you're on a ship, you're sitting on a huge living organism. So you need to understand what's underneath that ship. you know, and how healthy the water around the ship is. So we have all this really cool equipment, like video microscopes, the bottom left corner there, that's a video microscope. We can look at plankton count in the water. How healthy is it? Is there enough there to support life that we want to see? Hydrophones, because if you're in Alaska or Baja, being able to hear whale song before you see them, that's really cool. And then you've got videographers on all of our Lindblad Nat Geo fleet, and they're filming that departure. And at the end, there's this really cool, actually it now comes, and I happen to have one here. It now comes in like this really cool little card, which is a little card that goes into your computer. I'll get it in front of my shirt so you can see. There we go. And that plugs into your computer, and there's a video on this of your expedition. And so it's just such a great thing to share when you get home, and a wonderful memory, because it's got all those new friends you've met on board and the experiences just from that particular departure. It used to be a CD, but we've done away with those because we're actually, 2018, we became a carbon neutral company. And that's a really big thing for us. We've cut down on single-use plastics on our ships. We're working with all of our providers and suppliers to ensure they are single-use plastic free. But it means we offset all of the carbon from our ships, from my travel, from our offices in New York and Seattle. And we're continually looking how to draw down that carbon footprint as well. It's all well and good to say you're carbon free, but you need to use less and less each year. So that's a big mandate that we have. But all the equipment, the kayaks, the Zodiacs, the paddle boards, and of course, you know, I talked about the photography. That's Flip Nicklin from the National Geographic, my favorite spit on a lens photo. Wildlife, it's not about, we don't touch wildlife. It's all about whether they come up to you. And baby elephant seals have this propensity to want to come and lay on anyone who's on a beach, because mum's just gone away and decided not to feed them anymore. So if you sit still long enough, they will scuttle all over you. But the B&H Photo Locker is such a great addition to the program. The other thing I think, Sheila, it's worth chatting about is our family program because of Global Explorers. We do get a lot of families, and they tend to be families that really want their kids engaged and understanding, or grandchildren. And we put together a program with National Geographic Education, which is on all Alaska, Baja, and Galapagos trips. And they get this super cool field notebook when they get on board. They have all these fantastic daily activities, spotting wildlife, taking footprints with plaster of Paris, water samples, learning how to drive a Zodiac, you know, and then they get to come back and present to the ship. But they keep this diary throughout their journey. And it's really remarkable to see how engaged our kids get and how much they participate in the experience. But certainly, you know, families across our destinations are really strong for us. We talked about food. It's all really great. I would nearly say that I have never known a person who has got on one of our ships and got off without having put on weight, because the cookies in the lounge are really good. Sheila's laughing because she knows it's really hard. If you travel on Orion or Explorer, and on all the ships really, but Orion, which is my baby, I've been with her since she was built. Chef Lothar, whose birthday is today, does these amazing white chocolate chip macadamia nut vanilla cookies, and he cooks them fresh. So when you're getting off the Zodiacs coming back in at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, all you can smell is cookies, and everyone's like, oh, I'll just take one, and you end up leaving the bar with like a handful of chocolate chip cookies. And yeah, they're like drugs. You can't not stop eating them. Type of folks who travel with us. Lots of couples, lots of solo. We have a solo cabins dedicated on every ship. And we have a share program. We have so many guests who've joined us over the years as a share, and then continue to travel with the person they met, because it's very like-minded. The people who travel with us tend to just get along with everyone on board. It's a very like-minded experience, very casual. There's no dressy evenings, no jackets required, no ties, no dressy outfits. You truly are in expedition mode. Relaxed, casual, and just, you know, have a little bit, yeah.
I just mentioned a couple of solo ladies are on the call today who have traveled with you as solo ladies in a solo cabin, but you just maybe mention your share program for those that don't know. What that actually means is that you guys match them up with someone of the same sex, right?
Correct. So if you're a lady that wants to travel, we will find another lady that will go in that cabin with you, and it means you're paying the half the cabin fare, as you would if you were a couple traveling together. But if we don't find you a share, you keep that lower pricing. We don't put you up to the solo supplement. And so it's a great way, if you're prepared to travel with a new friend, make a new friend. It's a win-win situation. You either make the new friend or you get the cabin to yourself and keep the lower pricing. So, I think it's a great program. We've done it ever since we started. Actually, when I did Antarctica a couple of years ago, we had two ladies and they were sharing, and they met on the dock in Ushuaia. And of course, we all went into our cabins, and they came out half an hour later and they were wearing the exact same sweatshirt from IKEA, and they both drove Subarus. It was like we'd had the CIA do a background check on them, but they were so similar. It was kind of scary.
But now if solos want their own cabin, there is that option too.
There is, on every ship.
Cabins that have lower cost.
Correct. And on the new ship, the Endurance, which is our brand new baby, which is just waiting for this pandemic to be over, all of her solo cabins are balcony cabins. So she's got beautiful solo cabins. But I love this shot here because for us, it's about, if you want to push yourself, you can. The polar plunge in Antarctica is certainly worth it if you don't mind jumping into some pretty chilly water. It's always a glass of scotch waiting for you, some warm towels. But just getting out there and enjoying yourself, and just the laughter that we hear all the time on our ships. Open bridge policy, for those of you who've traveled with us, this is the best seat in the house. You should always take the time to go and sit with the captain. Early morning, cup of coffee, late in the evening, take up a drink, glass of wine, whatever, just sit there. It's great viewing of wildlife. But these guys have been traveling these oceans and seas for years, and there's no better person to ask the history of the regions we visit. We actually have one captain who does our Alaska and Baja, and as an Australian, I love traveling with him because his name is Captain Cook.
Well, I'm from Corner Brook, Newfoundland, and Cook came to Newfoundland too, so we have everything named after him as well. Can I just mention something here about the bridge? That picture you were just on. What's really neat about that is that Laura had mentioned when we did the circumnavigation of Newfoundland that we saw blue whales. Well, what I loved about this, and this is another power of expedition cruising, is they don't have to be at a wharf at 6:02 and they have to keep everything to a schedule. We have to be there because another ship's coming in behind. If an expedition cruise sees a whale, they stop. Everybody came up to the deck where these folks are. We had naturalists that were pulling out books to show us. We saw a blue whale and a fin whale. They were educating us about the blow. I didn't know that whales had different blows, different colors, the water that they blow out of their bodies. And you can tell what whale it is by the shading of the whale in the water and the shape of the blow. And they let us all wait until the whales moved. We all got to see them, look at the binoculars. The naturalists were explaining to us what we were seeing and made sure we all got to see it. And isn't that one of the biggest powers of expedition cruising?
It is, the flexibility, because we're not on any schedule except having the opportunity to see what we're there to see. Another good example of that was we were in Antarctica 2 years ago, and we saw some really unique behavior by a pack of killer whales called wave hunting, where they come up against a block of ice which has prey on it, which happened to be a seal, and they'll all come in together, united, and create a wave that can wash the prey off the ice. And we were already down at dinner, and our expedition leader came down. She was so excited. She's like, everybody up to the bow right now. All 102 people got up and ran to the bow, and here's this pack of 6 killer whales hunting this seal. And it was nearly 2.5 hours. And in that time, they brought all the dinner up onto the bow and drinks and the expedition leaders and the photographers. And we just stayed and watched this unfolding drama. And there's a great video, which I can send you, Sheila. You can share with everybody.
Oh, that'd be great.
And luckily, it was a happy ending. The seal, who was named Kevin by all of our guests, I'm not sure why you call a seal Kevin. It seems like a pretty random name for a seal. But Kevin survived to live another day. killer whales often when they have a young will teach them. So it's a teachable moment. They're not necessarily hungry, so they're not there to eat, but they're teaching their young how to do this procedure of wave washing. So that is exactly, Sheila, that is the perfect example of, if we see something, the reason you're there is that reason. It's there to see that blue whale. It's there because you want to see that particular thing happening. So the last thing you want is, oh, well, no, we've got to be here at 3 because we're doing this. That's not an expedition. That's a cruise. And there's nothing wrong with that. But this allows you to really linger that and take the time to take it all in. And that's what an expedition is about. Honestly, and I used to say this a lot, I probably should, now's probably not the best time to use it. We try to avoid other people like the plague.
Perfect.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we wanted to chat with you today is because why expedition? And I keep interrupting because I get so excited.
That's okay.
One of the things I love about expedition is that, like you said, your biggest ship is what, 168, did you say?
148, guess.
148, and your smallest is 26?
28. Yep, on the Amazon.
So this is not a moving mall like Royal Caribbean. Yeah. You don't have 6,000 people on board.
No. And what's really interesting, last year, 2019, early, because we went sustainable, and well, we've always been sustainable, because we really wanted to push ourselves and get rid of plastics on the ship. One of the things that created the most plastic waste was cleaning. All the spray bottles with all the cleaning stuff in it, tipping and mixing. And so our team had been working for several months on a project that would allow our ships to be sprayed with this system. They come in and they spray every surface, soft, hard, walls, ceilings, lights, handrails, everything. And this system, Clean Coat, kills viruses on contact. And so the whole ship is sprayed with this system. But the reason we originally did it was because we don't need all the cleaning bottles and the solutions and the hundreds of different little packets that were getting thrown out in the trash. The side effect was it kept our ships cleaner. We just happened to announce it in January of this year before this all happened. So it was kind of perfect timing. But so we actually have the world's only self-disinfecting fleet. So this system works that as soon as it is open to light of any description, sunlight, artificial light, the system starts to kill viruses on contact. And so it just creates a much cleaner, disease-free experience. But certainly there's a lot more protocols that go on, but it's nice to know that is there on the background of every ship that we have, right? That's the base level, that they are self-disinfecting. And our sustainability model is, it's not just about caring for the places we go to. It's education. It's ensuring that local people have the opportunity to be on our staff, ensuring that the money's going back into those local communities. It's all well and good to go to Baja and go to an all-inclusive, but none of that money stays in Baja. It goes back to the company that owns the all-inclusive. It's not helping the local community. For us, we use local drivers on our Zodiacs in Magdalena Bay, so you see the grey whales with them. We use local purveyors of food. Everything stays on site, and that's how you build strong communities to care for the wildlife. So that's really, really important to us. That's our biggest ship. That's the Explorer. She's 148 guests. One of the things I will say is there's also this misconception that when you use the word expedition, we're going to have you sleeping on a wooden pallet. It's not going to be comfortable. These are beautiful rooms. We have balcony suites. We have bigger suites upstairs. We don't have any internal cabins at all. It's all private bathrooms. I mean, they're lovely, lovely ships. But here's the key differentiation between us and a cruise. On a cruise, it's about spending time in your cabin. That's part of the experience, right? Being able to just go there and relax and luxuriate. I don't want you in your cabin. If you're in your cabin in Antarctica and there's penguins outside, I'm going to be knocking on the door going, are you okay? Is there a medical emergency that we need to be aware of? I mean, that's not why you're there. We want you to have these gorgeous rooms that have beautiful feather comforters and doonas and cotton sheets and robes and all the cushy stuff. but we also want you to get out of it, because you're there to be up on the bridge. You're there to be with your fellow explorers. And so to keep the ships intimate and small, your guest rooms can't be 2,000 square feet, because as soon as you do that, what happens to the size of the ship? It gets bigger. So when you're on a true expedition, you are investing in the luxury of access. That's what it's all about. It's about access. And it's about going to these places with the least number of people you can, so that you don't really have that feeling that you're trampling on things. You are there as an observer. This is our new ship in Galapagos, the Endeavour 2. We're very creative with the names of our ship. She replaced the National Geographic Endeavour. So she joined us 2 years ago. It's a lovely, lovely little ship. It's only 96 guests, but it's, you know, it's all about getting out in small groups on the Zodiac. So when you're out on those small groups, that's where you stay in groups of 10 to 12. And then we built 2 new ships in the US, the Venture and the Quest, which do Alaska and Baja. These have 22 balcony suites, you know, connecting rooms for families, dedicated solo. I love these ships because when we built, I don't know if you see in that photo, there's a tiered system on the bow. So everyone can have a front row seat. There's no bow equipment. It's all hidden beneath. So you've got these 2 tiers. So no matter where you are, you can get a clean photographic shot of what you're aiming at. There's no one in front of you. And it's just a great place to hang out. I mean, when I did Alaska last year, pretty much if we weren't out exploring and I wasn't asleep for the 4 or 5 hours, because I tend to want to be in the bridge most of the time I can be, this is where I was. Because you were out there with Carlos Navarro, who is the bear whisperer. And if anyone can see a bear from 5 miles through a pair of binoculars, that man will find you the grizzly bear. So, you know, you were up early at 5 in the morning out there with your coffee, and he'd be there with the spotter, and you'd be like, is there a grizzly bear? You know, and so that's the excitement of it. And you have to promise me, when you do Alaska with us, get up early. I mean, it is the most remarkable place to see on a small ship, because you are going into these little nooks and crannies where we honestly don't see anyone for a week. And you can sometimes come into these little bays and there are so many otters and their babies just nestled around the ship. And then there's so many eagles in the trees, it looks like Christmas ornaments. And then you'll hear pff, and there's a whale going past on the other side of the ship. It's just a magical place. And I think sometimes we think Alaska has to be those big ships down the center. And that's really not what Alaska is. Alaska is these small, really intimate experiences. That's the smallest ship. That's the one we're talking about, Sheila. That's our Amazon. That's the Delphine too. And I know you've done Amazon, and I think you swam with piranhas as well, didn't you? Did you swim with the piranhas?
I did. Well, we caught them, and I did swim in the Amazon. It's a scary thing, but you got to do it.
You got to do it. I was more scared, but so I'm, as we said, I'm from Australia, so we're not big fans of snakes in Australia because all our snakes can kill you. And it wasn't until I was in the water, I was so proud of myself. I got over the whole fear of getting in with a piranha. I'm like, I'm in here. This is cool. And he went, it's not the piranhas you have to worry about. It's the anacondas. I was like, awesome.
Frances did the Amazon with us, so she knows that too. Did you catch piranha too, Frances? Did you catch them?
Nope.
No? Okay.
No.
My husband Bill caught some piranha and they served him for supper.
Yeah, no, it's such a magical place. I love, and I was very lucky. I was there with a National Geographic sound recording artist. One of the hardest things today in this world is finding places where they can find areas to record sound that doesn't have planes or boats or engine noise in it. It's nearly impossible. And so we went out like 4:30 in the morning up one of these little tributaries to just get the sounds he wanted, with the frogs waking up and the dripping of the water onto the leaves and into the river. And it was the most remarkable experience, just sitting in the middle of the Amazon, total silence, and just listening to frogs and birds waking up, and him recording the sound for the National Geographic posterity.
Wow.
But those are the things that we sometimes get the chance to do. This is the new ship. This is our new baby, which we're very excited about, and she should have launched a month and a half ago. But of course, the pandemic put the squish on that. But she's She's only 126 guests. She's a new state-of-the-art. She's got that funky pointy nose you see there, which means she's an X-bow ship, which means instead of doing this in bad weather over waves, she cuts through them. So very stable, smooth ride in bad weather. And she's an ice class 5, which is the highest level ice class being built apart from an icebreaker, which is a different technology. But she can stand the ice all year. So this is the ship that will do Antarctica and the Arctic. But 75% balconies. She's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, just such a revolutionary vessel. The team is on board. I know, Sheila, you've been watching our virtual expeditions.
Yeah.
And we've all been excited because our bartender on board the ship has been doing many of those. So we've got sneak peeks at the new ice bar on board the ship. But this is what a lot of people don't realize. A lot of the teams are on these ships just waiting for our clients to get there. So they're ready and waiting to go and excited to get started. But she is a remarkable, remarkable ship.
There's some folks that aren't on my Facebook groups, but if you're on my Facebook groups, I've been sharing the Lindblad virtual expeditions they do every day. And I've put a couple in my weekly newsletter too. If you're interested in that, let me know and I'll send you the links after. It's really incredible. You guys have done a lot more than just drinks, and the drinks are fantastic.
Well, I am Australian. I had to lead with the drink.
I'm from Newfoundland. Us Islanders got to stick together, right?
Exactly. No, we do an R moment, which is, a moment of just beauty. We always have. So we've done some great photography tips for folks with their phones and cameras on how to get the best photography while you're locked up. We've got some great kids corner activities that our younger guests can participate in and go out and print off a sheet and go out and do wildlife bingo, which was really fun a couple of weeks ago. Great for kids and grandkids. But yeah, so each day we try and pick elements of what an expedition would be like. And Frances, you would remember this, Laura, when you're on our ships, you have your expedition leaders who wake you up each morning. Mm-hmm. And so you're laying in bed and you'll just hear, good morning, this is your expedition leader. I mean, it's the most wonderful sound in the world, isn't it? Because you're all excited because you're going to get off the ship and do something fun, but they just sound so serene. And we've had a couple of them do the wake up call, and I've recorded them on my phone because I'm like, that is the best phone message in the world. But there's all these little things. Once you've traveled with us, it becomes like you become groupies. The good morning. You would never think that would be so important, but you get home and the first couple of days you're home, you're like, oh, where's my good morning? And where's my wonderful, cooked breakfast and my fantastic cappuccino that I now have to make it myself. But it's really quite remarkable. So yeah, so any other questions, Sheila? What else we can
let me unmute it for a sec. I know we've been banging through the slides, and thank you very much, Lesa. Does anyone have any questions? She has a few more slides, but if there's any questions, this is a good time.
Sorry, I was late, Sheila.
You're good? Okay. Let's continue on then. If anybody has a question, raise your hand or jump in. I'll mute everyone again, though, if there's nothing immediately. Yeah, you didn't, the self-disinfecting, that was awfully good timing on your part, right?
It was awfully good timing. It's really interesting, the whole procedure on how they do it. There's a great video, I'll send it to you, Sheila, if you want to share it, but it talks about how the system works and how it's applied to the surfaces. But I think, with what's going on right now, we will probably see more and more of this being used in schools and public areas, because it's a great way to combat viruses. But yeah, look, one of my favorite things I can say, and probably drives my husband insane, is I've been skiing in Antarctica, which he's the skier of the family. He hasn't had the chance to do. But early season Antarctica, you can go cross-country skiing, and that's over about 4,000 foot of water right there, right? Because you've got all this amazing sea ice, but that's only early season. Once you get into end of really the very end of November, early December, and that sea ice starts to break up. You can't do the cross-country skiing anymore because you'll basically fall through. And you know, in Antarctica it is 4 months and 4 very different experiences depending when you're there. So, you know, that's where Sheila's expertise and our expertise in what it is you want to get out of a destination really comes to the fore. Because if it's baby penguins you want to see, there's a very small window where the opportunity is there to see them on the nest, right?
And that's, I've just unmuted everybody, so we're running a little bit long, but we'll go till 6 if you have another few minutes, Lisa.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I know that one of the questions that I've sometimes gotten you on the phone with the client and we talked about different things, because once you start to plan a trip, like whether it's Galapagos, Alaska, Antarctica, people get very specific questions. So I know that when is a good time to see the penguins is always a really popular question.
yeah.
Do you have, can I put that one to you?
Yeah, so look, if you're just doing the peninsula, you're going to see penguins throughout the season, end of October through to end of February. You'll see penguins, without a doubt. But you won't see baby penguins unless you're there towards the end of December, early January when they hatch, right? So if you want to see babies on the nest, end of December, early January into mid-January. And then they grow very quickly because it's a very short season and they're going to start to look like mum and dad going into February. But it doesn't mean the other times are a bad time. I mean, November is stunning because of all that white sea ice and it's just so beautifully pristine. As you get towards February, you've got a lot more melt and the ships can get further down the peninsula into the Antarctic Circle. And that's when all the whales start to gather for their migration back towards Russia. So, you know, you've got all of these different nuances. You're still going to get penguins throughout the season. You're going to get whales, you're going to get seals, but in varying numbers. And so that's why Sheila and I always want to get on the phone with one of you if you're looking at Antarctica and say, what is it that has drawn you to see the great white continent? What is in your mind's eye of what you want to see? And if you say to me, it's all that ice and that beauty and it's just pristine, November, early December is the time to go. If it's all about, oh my God, I love whales. Whales are my focus. February, right? You're still going to see the penguins and you're still going to see the ice, but it's a little bit more like mud season in Kamloops.
Yeah. Where can I get one of those penguin hats?
Isn't that cool? Well, that's actually an Amazon.com penguin. Every trip we have several people with their varying penguin hats. My favorite are the homemade ones because they always rock. They're brilliant when people knit their own penguin hats. They tend to be a big hit.
So I know we have Laura. Are you still on the call? I think I got you muted. Let me. Laura is one of my clients, Lisa, who's been to now I'm going to forget 158 countries. Laura, is that right?
Yeah, 158.
158. So
wow.
She traveled with Lindblad. She did the Newfoundland circumnavigation with me.
Yeah.
There's spots left on you've been to Antarctica too, right?
Yeah. I got to do the stands, about 20 countries in Africa and some of the Middle East.
Cool.
So I'm not sure, you guys don't do, well, you do Vietnam, but you've been to Vietnam.
Okay,
Yeah. It'd be good if you go up the west coast of Africa, or if you go into the Black Sea, go to like Ukraine and Georgia. You got to take a boat in there.
I will get right on that for you.
Okay, I'm just trying to, someone is chatting, but I don't think asking a question, and I muted everyone again. Anyone have a question again, or can I mute? I think someone answered a phone call, so I just want to.
Yeah, no problems.
Yeah. Okay, I'll unmute again. You know, it's really neat about Lindblad and the fact that you guys have been doing this now for more than 50 years, I think. What is it, 50, 52? 54. So you guys were the first ones to bring non-scientists to Antarctica.
Yep, Galapagos and Easter Island. We actually, Lars Erik also worked with Easter Island, or the folks out in Easter Island, to build the first runway so that guests could get out to see Easter Island. The first into Svalbard, actually, with guests, and the first on the Amazon. So there's a lot of first places that he felt really needed people to understand how fragile they were and that they needed to be protected. So,
well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I do keep track of different offers for the solo travelers, especially. I like to keep an eye on that. Always like to make sure it's a best match for clients. You know, whether you're looking at ocean cruising or expedition cruising, what the differences between the partners. As you've gathered, and if you follow my newsletters, you know I've been a huge fan of Lindblad for years and years. I think they are the absolute best at what they do. And if you're going to do a bucket list trip, you might as well do it right. And any last minute questions before we let Lisa go?
I have one. I think I'm there.
Francis,
I guess I not so many times do people be called Francis. So the other lady, I was kind of in the beginning. I was wondering who you were talking to, but anyway.
Sorry, Frank. You
there you go.
Francis, and I thought maybe you preferred that these days.
No, I think maybe I got to change that because I want to rate it as Francis, but hey, I'll be born and bred Frank. but I guess to be fair, I guess I'm from Newfoundland, living in Newfoundland still. I'm in transplant in Nova Scotia right now for another couple of months. But, some of these things, I live and breathe forestry. So some of these things, but like some of the more, I'll call it exotic places for myself is where my interest is to a certain extent. And I guess I'm going to ask you to do a little crystal ball exercise right now. And you know where I'm heading, right? Basically, if there was a place that you think that you're going to be able to go to first, given our situation we have right now, where do you think that's going to be? Because there's such a, I guess for myself, I'm getting to the age and where I have time and probably the resources to do some things, and it's like why now? Like I'm being a little selfish, but to some extent, where do you guys think if you're going to undock a boat?
Yep.
Where is that going to be? Because it might be, right?
So look, there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered for all of us, and we actually just entered into a small US ship alliance with some other folks like Uncruise and American Queen and those folks, because of our size and being having American flagged vessels, we are going to have access to Alaska this season. So that's the first place we see that's going to open back up. Probably towards the end of season, but we're within the size and scope that, that's the area we're probably looking at first. I would then say Antarctica, definitely, because, it's the one continent that does not have COVID to begin with. But it's just such a remarkable place, and there are ways to do it that really limit exposure to anyone else. But I think every other place, to be honest, Frank, is going to come down to those ports being opened by the governments that have those, that are in those countries. Norway is closed for another month. Svalbard, is closed for another month. So Canada is closed, particularly to Americans, for another month. You guys have done a much better job.
We still want your money, but
Yes, that's okay.
I'm shameless.
Money and stay home.
Yeah, I'm shameless.
I'm Australian, remember?
Yeah, true. Two good ones here now, probably. Yeah. No, that's insightful. Thank you very much. Yeah.
No, my pleasure. Look, there's nothing more than we're explorers. We don't want to be stuck here, not doing what we love doing, but we also know that it's got to be done in gentle phases that people feel safe, and we have an exemplary safety record, and so for us it's making sure we keep you safe.
And that's the booking policy you have too, Lisa, is an important thing too, right? If people book and for some reason it doesn't go ahead, you can move it to another future.
Yeah, that's what we did this year. So anyone who had a booking this year up till the end of this year, if they don't feel comfortable going this year, we're just letting them move it to 21 with no penalty. That we'll just move it over for you and keep the 2020 pricing. We've been as flexible as we totally can be. You know, our Lindblad guests tend to become family. We've got so many folks that have done 6, 7, 20, 30 trips with us. It becomes, they get to know everyone on board our ships. And so for us, we're taking care of the people that mean the most to us, our clients and our advisors that work with us like Sheila.
Well, this is fantastic. I know some people had to get off and then just joined us again, so I'll just unmute everyone quickly. Any last minute questions before I let Lesa go? Don't see any hands raised, I don't think. Oh yes, Kathleen, sorry, go ahead.
Not a question, just a comment. You've made an excellent presentation. I've never used Lindblad. I've been on an expedition, but this sounds very appealing.
Oh, lovely. Well, I'm always available. Sheila is the master of getting me on the phone whenever she needs me. She tracks me down no matter where I am. So always happy to answer questions if you've got any. But I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your schedules to jump on the Zoom with us tonight. And it's just nice to talk about what you love to do. So yeah, anytime that you have questions, just let me know.
Thank you very much, Lesa. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. I did hit record, so hopefully I recorded it this time. I think last week it didn't save properly for me. And if it did, I can send you a link and you can watch the recording. Lesa, thank you for your time. Keep safe, everyone.
Thank you,
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.